44 years, 14 albums, 6 golden guitars, sold out Sydney Opera House shows more than once. John Farnham, Olivia Newton-John, Paul Kelly, they've all recorded her songs. She's danced on national television, she's designed fashion, acted, spoken to stadiums of women and built her own independent record label from the ground up. And she did all of this while refusing at every single turn to be put into a box. My guest today has been on stage since she was 3 years old. She recorded her first song at 8 with her mother, and the entertainment industry has been trying to figure out what to do with her ever since. Spoiler, they still can't. Melinda Schneider is one of Australia's most beloved and enduring artists. And what I really love about her story isn't the awards or the accolades. It's that after 4 decades, she has realized that what drove her success then is not what will bring her satisfaction now. This is a wonderfully rich conversation about self-worth and what it really means to come into your own in your midlife. Let's get to the podcast. Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff. Ms. Melinda Schneider, welcome to Big Stuff.
Thanks, Danielle. How are you?
I'm super excited to have you on here. And I'm going to say, I reckon I manifested you because I was at the Tamworth Music Festival, just passing through Tamworth when it was on, and I saw your posters around and I was like, oh, I'd like to see her.
Oh.
And then I came back to my hometown, Thirroul, and your posters are at Anita's Theatre because you're coming to Thirroul soon. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Here you are again, like in 2 places. And then I got the email in my inbox and I was like, the universe is a wondrous place.
You manifested it, darling. You manifested it.
Yeah, I'm claiming it. Anyway, I'm claiming it. I'm so excited about this conversation because there's so many different things that I want to talk to you about because you've had such an enormous career. You've been like sort of around somebody that I've known of for a really long time. And you've been through a lot of things that I really resonate with. Yeah. So having the opportunity to just have a really raw, authentic conversation with you is exciting to me.
Thank you.
Because sometimes we see people in the public eye and we imagine that life is just so much easier when you're a successful working artist and life would therefore just be smooth. Yeah. It's quite a flawed perception, would you agree?
Yes, totally. It's just a different kind of difficult. Dare I use that word? But yes, it's complicated and it's challenging in different ways, I suppose, than having a regular kind of a job.
When creativity, making things, expressing yourself through your creative art is what you do, it's almost like you're driven to do it.
Yeah, it's like.
Would you say it's like that for you?
Yeah, I think you don't have a choice. You just are compelled to do it, and I think I've always done that ever since I was a child. I started writing poems as a kid in primary school, and I loved writing poems. I wrote really good poems, and then it graduated to the songwriting. I grew up in a family of songwriters. My mum and my auntie Rita were, wonderful songwriters, and it was pretty normal for me to have people writing songs in my house. So it was a natural progression for me. I think I was writing songs when I was 3 and 4 too, like all kids do. I think it's a very natural thing for everybody. I think we're all creative beings, but then maybe somewhere along the way we lose that permission to do it or something like that.
Yeah, isn't that the tragedy of humanity is as kids start to feel judged or whatever, they let that side of themselves go to pasture, which is so sad. But you actually were performing from 3, is that right?
Yeah.
You were performing from such a young age. And as you mentioned, it's something that's very much in your family. So when that has been such a huge part of your life, your lineage, all of that, how do you work out where like an expectation ends and you begin?
That was a lifelong quest. I think I was raised by a couple of parents who had extremely high expectations of me, both professionally and morally, and a perfect reflection on them. And I did a really wonderful, a perfect impersonation of perfect for many, many years, up until I was about 47, I reckon, when I had a collapse and I got major depression, and I just couldn't continue on that way anymore. It was killing me trying to maintain this story of success and this public image and manage people's perceptions of me. The perfectionism was killing me. The workaholism was killing me. And I ended up really, really unwell, and I had to change my ways. So since 2018, I've been on a really steep learning curve and made lots of changes to my life, and I have a much more balanced life now, and my expectations have been massively lowered, and that's been wonderful for my mental health.
It's an enormous undoing, though, unlearning, when you've had sort of, it's your programming, right? These really high expectations. When you said the perfect impersonation of perfection, I think so many women will really resonate with that, playing this role.
Yeah.
And to unlearn that is very difficult. Did you find it frightening?
Terrifying. Terrifying. The most terrifying thing I've done publicly in my career was tell my mental health story, to tell a story of struggle. It took me about a year in therapy to unpack the terror that I felt around that, and to feel strong enough to do it, because I knew that my mum's 93 now. She, there's a lot of shame there, and she, I knew she would hate me telling that story, but it was this thing that was keeping me stuck. Having to sort of protect her from shame was keeping me stuck. And the night before I went public with my story, I spoke to Jessica Rowe, actually, who's been a wonderful advocate for mental health and speaking about mental health issues. She's one of the first people in Australia to really do that publicly.
Yeah, she has.
I called her the night before I came out, and said, I'm terrified. I was having a panic attack, She said, Melinda, this is your mum's feelings around this have got nothing to do with you. It's not your shame. Trust me, once you tell your story, you'll be surrounded by love. People will appreciate it so much. And just trust me, you're going to fly. You're not going to fall. It's going to work out. And she was fantastic for me that night, because I really, truly was terrified. I think I went on 702 with Richard Glover. It was my first interview, and he's gorgeous. He's such an empathetic person, and he was a wonderful person to do my first interview with. But it was really scary, because I was dissembling all of that perfect public persona I'd put up for 47 years. Yeah.
What were you scared of? I mean, I know there's the dissembling, so it feels destabilizing when you're dissembling yourself. But what was the reaction or response that you were afraid of?
Being a disappointment. I think that was the biggest thing. Yeah. Being a disappointment to people. Yeah, I think that was the big one really for me. I mean,
To people that you knew, or to the people, because when you're in the public eye, there are all these people that you don't know who know you.
yeah, I think being a disappointment to my family first and foremost. You know, my mum, my dad died 22 years ago. But just being a disappointment to, yeah, the fans out there who have followed my career all these years and have, you know, been so loyal and think that I'm this particular person, and I don't know. Look, I think when you've got a mental health diagnosis,
100%. It's not rational.
there's so much shame that comes in initially. You know, I was in bed for 6 weeks when I had my first collapse, that first bout of depression. I just couldn't function at all. I couldn't pick my son up from school. I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed.
Let's go back and tell us what happened, because I have no doubt that there were flags along the way that you ignored. So please, tell us as much as you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And and really let us know, because I know so many women and men, but so many women in this stage of life who are ignoring all of the flags of burnout.
Yeah.
Thinking it'll be okay. Soon I'll be able to rest. Soon it'll be, one day it's going to be different. I just need to get through this.
Yeah. Well, I never listened to my body at all. It was something else was driving me, that unrelenting standards schema that I had in place, where I just had to keep achieving, keep having success, success after success after success. I couldn't even enjoy the successes. I'd have one and I'd go, okay, right, what's next? I just couldn't even sit in it and take it in and feel proud about myself. None of that. It was just the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And it was unsatisfying, really. And I ignored my body. My body would get exhausted. I wasn't sleeping much. I was staying up. My son and my husband would go to bed, and I'd be up at 3 a.m. still working on projects, typing into my laptop, exhausted. And then you get past that point of tiredness and then you just keep going. And I was doing that for weeks on end. And beating myself up at the same time about not being good enough. So, killing myself and then beating myself up on top of that. And my body would say to me, oh, I'm just so tired. And I'd say to my husband, Mark, I'm so tired. I don't think I've got the energy to put out this next record. And he'd say, well, don't put it out. And I'd say, I have to. I'm self-employed. I've got to keep putting stuff out there and keep working. I'm self-employed. And I just would never have any time off. I wouldn't have any fun. I wouldn't have any time off. I just felt guilty if I rested. There was all of that stuff going on. And eventually there was a trigger, and I probably don't feel too comfortable talking about too much of that, but it was to do with my mum. And after a show one day that I was on stage with Mum, I felt after that show that I was really unwell. I came home and I said to my husband, I'm not well. I feel like my brain feels broken. There's something's happened to me. And he said, right, go to bed. You are a workaholic. You never have any time off. Just go to bed. Watch Netflix, do not work, and Mark has depression and is on medication, and, he was when I met him. So he knew what it was. He had been through a collapse. So I did take his advice. I did go to bed, but I wouldn't believe my GP said, look, you've got adrenal fatigue, Melinda, there's no doubt about that, but I think you've got depression. and maybe you could go on some medication. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not taking medication. I had a real stigma around that.
Which is interesting because Mark has
Yeah.
had depression and been on medication, and you just love him and there's no judgment around that, and you support that in him.
Yeah.
What do you think it was about this sort of the idea of medication that was just not okay for you?
Well, as you said, I'd always been able to support Mark. If he woke up and said, I've got a bit of the black dog this morning, I'd say, okay, go to bed, just stay in bed and curl up in the fetal position, or whatever you've got to do. And I was understanding about that always. But it's different when it's you, and depending on how hard on yourself you are. And also believing that I could fix everything myself, overly responsible. I can fix this. I don't need medication. I wasn't comfortable with surrendering to, the idea that I had depression, and that I wasn't comfortable with surrendering to taking any medication initially. So things started to get a little bit better with just pure bed rest. I started to feel like I was coming out of it a bit.
Did you still struggle with that, like with that guilt though, the idea that there's so much that I should be doing?
Oh, yeah.
Or...
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so, that was about May 2018. And then sort of later that year, I started to creep up with the workaholism again. The pressure to do that again was there. And then in April the following year, the depression came back again. And I lost a very good friend. A good friend of mine took his life, my old flatmate, and that was devastating. So I just the depression had come back, and then that happened. And then that took me really down into a very, very dark place of grief. And it was then that I saw a psychiatrist, and he said, look, Melinda, you don't have to do this all on your own. Just take this medication just for a year, just to get you out of the hole, just for a little while. And trust me, it's going to help you. And it did. And I that was the hardest part for me. Surrendering and accepting help was the hardest part for me. And I did feel better as soon as I took that medication. It wasn't an SSRI. It was an easier medication to get off than that for me. I'm not on it now. But I was on it for 4 years, and I needed it at that time, and it did help me get out of that hole. Yeah, until I was able to change my life and change my ways and the way I look after myself.
And it really does take a whole new system, right? It's not just eat well and sleep more or reduce alcohol, or it's a whole thing, including your thinking.
Yeah.
How did you reprogram your thinking?
Well, I would, whenever that little inner voice, that critical inner voice would come in saying, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, forget should. Should is shit.
Should is shit. We need T-shirts, Melinda.
Should is shit. So I used to say to myself, and I still do occasionally when it comes back, I am worthy just because I woke up this morning. I don't have to be achieving anything in order to be worthy. I am enough just because I got out of bed. And so usually that does the trick for putting that little critical voice back in its box. Yeah.
It's amazing how loud those voices get and how long we've had them for.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes when they get particularly loud, people don't realize that they've been there for such a long time that most of the time you don't even hear them. It's like a radio station that you're not listening to anymore. It's just always there.
Yeah.
Which has been that constant driver for you. What are you doing differently now to ensure that you stay on the right track? Now, okay, so we'll leave it with that question first.
Yeah. Well, practical things like not too much alcohol. I'm not a big drinker anyway, but I might, maybe have one drink a week, 1 or 2 a week. So, yeah, just not too much alcohol. I can't really have caffeinated coffee anymore, so I have decaf. Sleep is the most important thing. I go to bed usually around 8:30 or 9, and I wake up about 6 a.m. So,
So good.
and I have great sleep now. It's not broken sleep unless I'm really worried about something's playing on my mind. I might wake up at 2 a.m, but it doesn't happen very often. Magnesium really helps, having a lot of magnesium. I've got magnesium drops I put in my water. I've got spray and cream and everything. I use that all the time. Walking, which I don't do enough of, and I need to get back into that. Swimming, I swim most days in the ocean. The salt water is so healing for me and so good for my brain. I can really feel it. And it's even better in winter when it is a little bit colder. It has
God, you're a psychopath. You're one of those.
It has a better effect. But any salt water is incredible for you. I can feel the difference. And, I've had a pretty hard 8 months. My mum is 93 now. Last June, she was very sick. She nearly died, and she can't live at home alone anymore. So I've just been through moving her out of her house, moving her up into care near me on the Central Coast, cleaning out my childhood home. There's been a lot of grief and a lot of letting go, a lot of processing stuff this past 8 months. So I've needed the amount of times that I've gone for a swim in the morning and just cried and cried and cried in the ocean is unbelievable. I bob in our local beach with, they call themselves the Budai bobbers, and the amount of times that they've hugged me and all gathered around me and just let me sob, it's been a lot. But that's been so healing, and having a supportive community, a place where you can be yourself, where you can be vulnerable and share, difficult times with people who are kind and care about you. That's a big part of it too. And then just balance, just not working too hard, lowering expectations, which I have.
And how have you done that? But when you've had a lifetime of such high expectations first put upon you, and then, high expectations of yourself, how do you actually go about
It's hard.
like loosening the grip?
It's hard. Look, I think being 54 helps because I haven't got that same desire, or you could even call it desperation, to get to some level of success, because I've achieved a lot, and I just don't have the same energy. I see a lot of younger artists on social media, and they're working it every day with videos and all of that kind of thing. And sometimes I think, oh, Melinda, you should be doing more of that.
I know.
And then I
should is shit.
And then I go, you know what? I don't know if I want to live my life every day on social media. I don't know if I want that for myself. It's hard on the nervous system.
100%.
Dealing with the comments, the trolls, all that kind of stuff. Do I want that in my life as much as some other people have got it in their lives? We have to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves these questions. And sometimes we can only do what we can do, and that's okay. And maybe I have been grieving the change in the music industry. I'll never get a gold record again, probably. I've got 3 gold records. I probably won't get another one because record sales just aren't what they were. Chart positions, a lot of those have changed in the way that they're calculated, and they're not always honourable a lot of the time. It's okay to let go of that. When is enough enough? Like how much do you need? How much success do you need? I want to still be able to earn a living and, provide for my family and all of that kind of thing, of course. That's important. But as far as, awards, chart positions, all of that kind of thing, it's not as important as it once was, And look, I had a #1 album last week.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. First weekend with my album on the ARIA chart, and that was purely from a sales perspective, and that was lovely. It was actually a pleasant surprise. I didn't think that was going to happen. So
Wonderful.
it was lovely, and I really appreciated it, probably more than I did in the past.
Do you feel like now that you sort of done a bit of the work on, I guess it's that external validation piece,
Yes.
that now you can see that as like a lovely zing as opposed to the validation that you desperately needed in order to keep like the engine running, to keep driving and pushing?
In order to feel worthy.
Yeah.
That was what it was all about. Now I do feel worthy. My self-worth is so much better. I know I'm good at what I do, and I'm sort of doing what I do now for different reasons. Apart from to provide for my family and earn a living, I'm also doing what I do to connect with people. And that is the most important thing to me. My songs are very emotional. A lot of people cry throughout my shows, and get inspired as well. But the way I touch people with my sad songs and giving them permission to feel something, that means more to me than anything, because so many of us push away our feelings and our grief, and we don't often give ourselves permission to cry. And I think that's one of my superpowers, is what I'm doing now in my shows with the vulnerability and the stories I'm sharing, connecting, along with my songs, take people on a very emotional journey, and I love that.
It's interesting, and I was a journalist before I was a coach and a speaker, and I found that the more real, raw, vulnerable I was in my writing, the more people related to it.
Yeah.
And you feel that also as a songwriter.
Yeah.
And yet there was something about sharing your story that felt different. Why do you think it felt different?
Because I think I was worried about how it was going to affect my mum. Yeah. I didn't want to embarrass her by having a daughter with depression. That's what was worrying me. And look, it still worries me, because that's the way I was raised. I was raised to hide your flaws. Don't talk about your flaws, because it brings shame on the whole family.
It's so old school, isn't it?
It's very
Can you talk
old
to your mum now about it?
She doesn't really talk about depression or, any of the troubles. I can't really. No, I can't. And look, I didn't tell my mum about my depression for about 18 months after I had it, because I knew that she would not understand it, even though I think she's probably had it herself at times. She would, she would use insensitive words around it, like crazy and mental and things like that, which I didn't want to hear at the time. So I protected myself from that. It's a different generation. She's just 93. She's from a different generation.
And no shade on mums who, maybe don't understand, but it can feel very difficult as a child when that is the person that you have gone to for a large portion of your life for support or advice or wisdom, and when there is a particular subject that you can't broach with them, it almost sort of creates a distance between you.
Yeah. And I just think there was just so much pressure on me to be everything for my parents. I was the only child, it was all on me. And yeah, you don't want to feel like a disappointment. So it's just, it's okay to protect yourself when you need to and put some boundaries up. I've learned that as well.
Hell yes. How empowering are boundaries?
Very.
How uncomfortable are boundaries? How uncomfortable are they when you're first learning?
Very hard, but then you sort of start to enjoy them. Yeah, you start to step into the power of them, And they can be done with kindness and love. They don't have to be aggressive. But yeah, it's I'm getting a lot better at that now with practice.
Yeah, it does take practice, and I think that you become a masterful communicator because you do want to uphold your boundary and you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So you just have to get much better, clearer at communicating.
Yeah. And look, sometimes, sometimes you lose friends because of it too. If that happens, sometimes that does happen in life where people can't meet you where you're at.
And has that been your experience through this time?
Couple of times. Yeah, a couple of times along the way I have. I think we all do, don't we?
Sure.
At different times in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we can't always grow at the same time, in the same way.
No, no. I think it's important to know when you need to just keep bringing it back to yourself.
Yeah.
You mentioned before the grief of shutting down your mum's life or transitioning your mum's life. I lost my mum in October.
No, I'm sorry.
Thank you. She had MS and chose voluntary assisted death.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a good death. It was a beautiful death, but there was a lot of that, closing down her life in the admin sense as well as the sort of physical, spiritual, emotional sense for us as humans, as women together.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of emotion that goes with that. And even though our circumstances were very different to yours, the way that impacted or showed up, I should say, in my life was really interesting and in some ways quite unexpected. Would you say that this transition of your mum's and the sandwich that it's sort of the pressure that it's put on you has impacted you in ways that you hadn't expected?
Absolutely. Yeah. I really do. I really am right in the middle of the sandwich generation right now. I've got a 13-year-old son and a 93-year-old mum and 80 years between them. And my husband is incredibly supportive, but it is mostly all on me. I'm the one they come to solve all the problems. And sometimes I feel really overwhelmed by that. And sometimes I can't solve all the problems immediately when they feel they need to be solved. And that's hard too, because I am a fixer and I do like to fix things.
Do you feel like that's part of the programming, the old programming, which is the expectation and being good and good girl and taking care of everything for everyone?
I do. I guess it's necessary now though, whereas maybe for years I was doing it when it was unnecessary.
Isn't it ironic that just when you've tried to unravel it, you're sort of forced into the role?
Yeah, it is interesting. So yeah, what I have learned from what I've been through this past 8 months is that I can do anything. I can deal with anything. And I've dealt with so many hard things and it was like walking through the fire, but I did it. And I feel my self-worth and belief in myself is a lot stronger since I've gotten through that. And, universe, I do not want any more to deal with. Thank
I
you very
know,
much. Do
right?
not test me right now. But
I get that
I
because
feel
sometimes it
like,
feels like just because I can do it, like somebody said to me,
yeah.
you're so strong, just be strong, stay strong. I'm like, I don't want to be strong,
Well, we don't want to
actually.
have to be all the time.
No, I want to be soft and I want to fall apart. And I've got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I've just been through the experience with my mum. And it sometimes feels like I don't actually have the time or the space to take care of my own needs or my own mental well being.
Yes.
because everybody else wants a piece of me. Like, how are you protecting yourself knowing how important it is for you?
Ah, just cutting myself some slack, I think.
What does that actually look like?
It means, I have been visiting my mum 3 to 4 times a week. She comes to my house every Tuesday and we paint together. And that's been a really beautiful experience. I cook her a roast dinner on a Tuesday after we paint. It's been lovely. But some days I'm exhausted, between doing gigs on the weekend, being a mum, keeping the house going, helping my mum, visiting her, doing all of that. It is absolutely exhausting. Having a new album out the last few weeks has been really busy. And, thankfully she has appreciated that fact. And she said, look, don't worry about me. Don't come today. I'm okay, which is fantastic that she said that. And I've been able to go, okay, I won't. I'll just rest. So doing a little bit more of that when I really check in with my body and my body's saying, oh God, do I have to go out, leave the house today? Just getting in the car and having to go somewhere some days is you just
Put
can't
pants
do
on.
it. Yeah, you just can't do it. You should see what I'm wearing from the waist down.
I'm imagining it now.
So just listening to my body and giving myself permission to have a day off, just
What does
take
rest
care of
actually
yourself.
look like for you?
I love watching series. I love different series on Netflix.
Yep.
And, I read, I play with my animals. I've got 2 beautiful cats and a dog, Dolly, and they bring me a lot of comfort.
How good
Swim.
are animals for the nervous system?
The
Just
best.
the best.
The best.
And
Yeah,
they love when you rest. That's their favorite thing.
they do.
I think when you're resting and they get to rest with you or like snuggle up on your lap in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
they're like, yes, this is how you're supposed to live, right?
Yeah.
They are the guides.
Yeah. Naps in the middle of the day are great. My husband and I, we love spooning. So we just spoon and we fit together perfectly.
Are
And
you the big or the little spoon, or are you versatile?
I'm the little one, always.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
So we love doing that. And that regulates our nervous systems too.
Absolutely. It's co-regulating, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, those sorts of things, just the ordinary things. We go for a swim, 2 or 3 times a day sometimes at our local beach. We're very close to the beach. So that is just so rejuvenating. Yeah.
You mentioned before your nighttime routine and how early you go to bed and how important that is for your health. When you have like lots of gigs, how do you recover? Because I have one late night out and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this.
It's hard. The last couple of weeks I've had some really gigs that were 2 or 3 hours away, and we've driven home with my musician or something afterwards, and get home at 1:30 or 2 in the morning. It is, you wake up and you feel like you're hungover. You've had nothing to drink. It is the worst feeling. So just sleep, just more sleep during the day to catch up. Yeah.
It is so nice to be able to listen to our bodies. And I think, as you say, you're 54, I'm 50 this year. It starts to change. We start to change in the way that we push our energy, I think. I definitely am giving less fucks about doing all of the things. It's like,
Yes.
I don't need to, be running around like a crazy woman anymore.
No.
Let's talk about your new album. Let's talk about the songwriting process and how you alchemize the shit bits of your life or the hard stuff to process it and create beautiful music.
Yeah. I think I've always sort of done that. Probably my first experience of writing about a shitty part of my life was when I was 13, and I was having some trouble at school with my group of friends. And I wrote a speech and delivered it to the class. And it talked about bullying and how I felt I was treated badly by those friends. That was the first time I'd spoken out publicly about, a difficult thing and put it into a creative space, I suppose. And it was really empowering. And then
Have you still got that?
that speech,
Yeah.
oh, it's probably in a box somewhere
I'd kill
in
to
the
see
house
that.
I just packed up. Yes, I will look for that.
Yeah.
I remember part of it, but yeah. So, and then I think along with my first broken heart, so around,
How old were you then? Yeah.
look, 17, 18 was when I first started writing love songs or heartbreak songs.
So brutal at that age as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
everything. It's consuming.
It's everything. And I'm a
Yeah.
Libran, so I was, in love with love and just the, idealist, the absolute idealist that I was going to find Prince Charming to rescue me. And that was all a lot of crap. There is no Prince Charming. I rescued myself.
Ah, yes. You've got so many mic drop moments in this. No, Prince Charming, I rescued myself. That is so great.
That's right. But the
Do you
first...
feel like you need to have adversity to write good music?
No, you don't have to. I think those songs are probably easier to write because they're much more painful and, in a way they're easier to write. The first song I wrote was called Not Worth a Tear, about this guy who'd broken my heart, and he wasn't.
And yet you cried anyway, right?
Of course, your first heartbreak, lots
Wonder
of
where
tears.
he is now. Do you think he ever heard that song?
No, I actually never released that, and it was a pretty good song. Anyway, yeah, look, a lot of the pain that I've been through in relationships, I've put into songs. There's no doubt about that. But this album is really quite a positive and uplifting album. There's a lot of really beautiful, wholehearted songs about love on this record that have been inspired by my life since I've become a mum, since I found Mark and been in a really happy, healthy, peaceful relationship for 17 years. I've written a lot of really, really positive songs that I hope will inspire people.
Yeah, amazing. I saw your duet with Diesel. I'm a long time Diesel fan.
Yeah.
So seeing you guys together was great. It's a beautiful song. What is your process for writing? Is it something that you do daily, or are you driven by a creative force that means you have to express yourself regularly, or do you play just for pleasure? Is it all about making, hits? Like, tell me what your process is.
I haven't been writing as much as I really could be writing, and I need to get back into that, even just journaling, I think the last year has been a challenging year, and there hasn't really been much time to focus on anything else but the crisis that I had to deal with. So I'd like to get back into it. But normally when I'm writing for a project or a new album, I just kind of open it up to the universe and go, okay, I'm ready to receive. I'm writing for this new record, and ideas just start coming to me, really. I normally start with titles a lot of the time. And then the music and lyrics kind of come at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
But the concept or the title often comes first for me, I think.
How important has journaling been throughout your life? You actually mentioned journaling a moment ago. Has that been a big part of your healing process?
Yeah, it has. I think it was important for me as a teenager. I did a lot of journaling. I found an old journal of mine a few years ago, And it was in one of my dad's big police sort of diaries that he used to take to work, a big, thick, hard-covered book. And that, I think it was important for me to journal because I was an only child and I didn't have siblings to talk to. And I think that to help me make sense of things within my family, I think writing them down did help me. Yeah, at that time. And I've done it, as an adult as well from, at different periods. But I think it would be great to get into a regular practice of doing that again.
Yeah, I'm really shit at it.
Yeah.
I've gotten good at meditating though.
Okay.
I'm a daily meditator, and I'm finding I've been someone, I've got a very busy brain. I've been someone who my whole life said, I can't meditate. My brain is just too busy. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
But now I'm like 180 days into a daily practice.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm
That's cool.
getting good at it. I went to a meditation group yesterday. I sat for an hour. 1
Wow.
hour.
Wow.
And I didn't go nuts. Like I thought I would do my own head in, but I didn't. So clearly the daily practice is starting to add up.
That's
which is
cool.
Great. Yeah. You used the word schema a little moment ago, and I'm wondering if you have had much therapy as part of your process of untangling,
Yeah.
getting rid of the layers of the onion, learning more about yourself. And
I have.
yeah.
I've had a lot. On and off. From about the age of 23, I think I went to see my first counsellor or psychologist. And I've had, probably a half a dozen across my life. I think you can get different things from different therapists, and sometimes you outgrow a therapist, so you feel like there's no more work to do with that particular therapist, and then you need to find someone else. And I've also found therapists that I didn't feel were a good fit.
Yeah.
And some who I even felt were a bit abusive, that I walked away from immediately. As soon as I got a sense that there was a bit of narcissism there or something like that, I was like, see you later. So, that happens too. I think you've got to trust your intuition. If you're leaving a therapy session feeling really bad about yourself or something like that, you should always feel like you should feel better, usually, I won't say always, but than when you walked in. You should feel like you've done something positive and, but if you're leaving there feeling like you've done something wrong, or you're feeling badly about yourself, or you're starting to doubt yourself, that's always a sign for me that maybe that person isn't quite healthy. So I've walked away from a couple as well. But I highly recommend it. It's hard, but I'm not afraid to sit in the shit and feel the discomfort, and I need to understand why things are happening. I'm one of those people who needs to understand why. I'm not satisfied with just going, oh, well, whatever, that's the way it is. No, that's not me. I've got to go about why is this happening and what led to that. And I am probably overly analytical, as probably all songwriters would be, but I have to understand why so I can grow and be aware and change things.
Look, that self-awareness piece is absolutely priceless. Being able to understand your responses, your triggers, it really is, it's priceless work. But as you say, it's not comfortable work. we don't love all that reflection and getting to the heart of the I guess the juicy heart prints. My podcast guest yesterday talked about the heart prints, which are the things that happen throughout your life, the imprint on your heart, in sometimes positive ways and sometimes negative ways, and then they show up throughout our lives. It's nice. Hey, maybe it's a new song, the heart prints.
Heart print.
Now, I heard that you do something that I also love to do.
Yeah.
During COVID, I took up painting.
Yeah.
And it was something that I found very, very therapeutic, very, very awesome. I also found myself judging the process. It's been a process of unraveling just to be able to be creative with it. But you love to paint too. And you mentioned that you do it with your mum.
Yeah. So there's two of mine behind us there.
Great.
I started during COVID too. And I always wanted to paint. I'm a creative. So I started out leaving school and going to TAFE and studied fashion. So I had my own label for a few years initially. Then I went into singing, and I've always wanted to be a painter, an artist, and it just wasn't until COVID that I had the time. So I started doing that, and I've had this wonderful local teacher, Annie, who's very nurturing. She's really helped me let go of judgment, let go of perfectionism, and to trust myself a lot more, trust my instinct. And it's just been a wonderful way to express myself. I'm into abstract expressionism, and it's been very freeing for me. So I've had 4 art exhibitions in the last 4 years. I just had one at Tamworth, at the Tamworth Regional Gallery, my Tender exhibition.
You're so brave. Everyone keeps telling me that I need to do something with all of these paintings. I'm like, no, I can't.
You've got to put it out there.
All right. How brave you are. You might be my inspiration.
So it's been great. It's been really healing. And yeah, it's been great for my mum at 93. She's only just started painting now. So she loves it. And she's quite an anxious person. So she often gets this nervous cough, my mum. And when she's painting, she doesn't clear her throat once.
Wow.
It's amazing because you're so in the moment when you're painting. Yeah. You're not thinking about the past or the future.
Has that letting go of perfectionism in painting spilled over into other areas of your life?
Yeah, I definitely think I'm not as much of a perfectionist as I once was. I still have very high standards around my albums and singing and songwriting and everything. If something's mediocre, it won't end up on the album. It's got to be an incredible song. It's got to be, I strive for the best. So I don't think I don't think there's anything wrong with that in songwriting. You want incredible songs out there. And vocals, you want your vocals to be as good as they can.
Things that you're proud of, right? It's got to be things that you're proud of. Yeah. I found with my art mentor, Tracy Verdugo, she's become a friend even, which has been a real joy in my life. But I can remember emailing her and saying, how do I stop judging myself? Because I go into it thinking it's going to be something, and then you get the messy middle part, the messy middle where you're like, this is crap, I'm crap, this is so hard. And she said, just keep saying, I wonder what will happen if I do this. And just be loose. I wonder what will happen.
Yeah, don't go in thinking it'll be something.
Yeah.
But
that's changed so many different things in my life, that I wonder what will happen if I do this. It's created like a freedom for me. So I feel like the painting has opened up other ways of thinking about creativity in my writing or in different areas of my life.
Yeah. I might steal that one.
Go for it. I wonder what'll happen, Melinda Schneider.
Yeah.
So what's you've just released a new album. Mm-hmm. What's next for you? While you're taking it easy, going slowly, and
trying to keep the balance. Touring till the end of March. I'm doing some shows in Victoria, Mimo Music Hall, the Suki Lounge, and another one at a winery, I think, and Ballina. Going to around New South Wales and Victoria.
Yeah, coming to Thurrool, my hometown.
And then August, I'm doing a whole different show called The Way We Were, the music and life of Barbara Streisand.
Oh, yeah, that's what you're
doing. So we're doing concert halls mainly with that tour, but we are coming to Anita's at Thurrool. We're doing the Opera House Concert Hall, QPAC, Hamer Hall, all those big venues.
Have you been a lifelong lover of Babs?
I have, yeah. She's amazing. And talk about a perfectionist. She is not a recovering perfectionist. She's still a perfectionist. So, there is pressure for me to make sure I deliver, as well as, to a level where she would be proud for this show. So that is a bit of pressure, but I've just got to put the work in, make sure I achieve that.
Yeah, and maintain the balance. It's got to be fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. I have loved this chat. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on and being so candid.
Thank
And
you.
I'm delighted that you have been able to unfurl, untangle, and come to a place of just knowing your undeniable worth, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Just for getting up.
We
That's amazing.
We wish that for every woman out there.
Yes, indeed. We certainly do. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Juicy. Isn't she just fabulous? Melinda has been performing since she was 3 years old, and it took until 47 to finally stop performing off stage. That distinction between the version of ourselves that we show the world and the one quietly exhausted underneath it, I feel like that's what this conversation was really about. Should is shit. How good is that? Write it down, stick it somewhere you'll see it, tattoo it if you have to. But I am going to leave you with a couple of thinking points this week. Firstly, what flags are you flying past right now? What are you ignoring? Not necessarily dramatic ones, it's the quiet ones. The 3 a.m. still at the laptop flags, right? The I'll rest soon ones, the I'll fix this myself ones. Melinda ignored hers for years. So what's been whispering to you that you keep turning the volume down on? And secondly, where in your life are you trying to maintain that perfect impersonation of a perfect person? Because I know that there is a version of you that people genuinely connect with, someone that they remember, someone who makes them feel less alone, the less polished version of you. That's the true thing. That is the true version of you. And it might be terrifying for you to allow that person to be the loudest version of you. But from everything that we heard and saw and felt through this conversation, that is the you that will bring you closer to your authentic self and your true happiness. Thank you for listening today, and I'll see you next time. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more big stuff.